Some consider 1994 the best year ever of television.
To throw some new slang at us, right? Low key might be my favorite episode that we do because of all of the changes in the industry itself. Everything's content today.
That's the buzzword, right?
You mentioned Apple TV. 1994, they're putting out what? The iMac? Could you have imagined then them being a studio for content?
Can you imagine telling a kid what TV Guide was?
Oh, yeah.
So good.
Oh,
so
good. It is. Every time. It gets better. We're aging like a fine wine.
We are. I do have to say though that now, thanks to this, I've noticed I've been getting a lot of random Twisted Sister ads, and
Mark Zuckerberg, turn that feature off.
and I recorded that, so it should be Twisted Eras ads, not
Right.
not crazy D. Snyder and makeup ads.
Maybe he's a closet fan. You know, he might be listening to the podcast. And
he
we
does.
Just don't
he's got
know
his
it.
own show, man. Maybe he's promoting us. That's how he's getting it. That's how I'm getting these ads.
Oh, that's incredible. Well, it's good to be back for another episode of season 2 of the Twisted Eras podcast. Rob Stott alongside Doug Marsh, and we're rolling along with 1994. Man, what a year!
It is incredible, and we've hit on several topics already, and today's is another one that it's amazing to see the eras of today to 94. It seems like forever ago. It's really only 30 years, but the changes that have taken place in what we'll talk about today in TV, it's a completely different world.
Low key might be my favorite. To throw some new slang at us, right? Low key might be my favorite episode that we do because of all of that, right? Because of all of the changes in the industry itself of television. And when I say the industry, I guess it's industries, because you've got the production side of it and TV, like the what we're watching,
right,
and how we're watching it.
And where we're watching it, and
exactly
on what we're watching it with.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly. So there's so much that's evolved with television from 94 to today, from your era growing up to today. So it's just lots to dive into.
There's so much to dive into, and we'll hit on it. That some consider 1994 the best year ever of television. And we'll talk about some of these shows that not only were hitting their peak in 1994, but that were debuting in 94 that are still relevant today.
I look at some of the names on that list, like TV show names. What? If there was ever a golden era of TV, might it have been 1994?
It's got to be. And to be honest, there's good TV after. Let's not say there's not. There's good TV sure. being made today. It's just not in this quantity.
Right. Well, the other thing too, like I don't even know, and maybe this is where we jump off. Like, do we even call it TV today? Like, we're looking at a TV in some cases.
Wow.
Right? Like, do we call it TV, or do we cut what's
good
the right term?
Right. What is the 2024?
Like, this is
definition?
Great content. Everything's content today.
That's the buzzword, right?
Right. It's all content. So like we've got there's great content out there, but it's not necessarily made for TV.
Yeah. What would your children think TV? What would that mean to them? Right.
TV would be Cocomelon, or the other things, Peppa Pig or Bluey.
Exactly.
So, right? That's what it is. It's still cartoonish, but like it's bite-sized songs that are made for a world of goldfish-brained children that don't have the attention spans to last for a 30-minute episodic thing off of Nickelodeon. I don't think they know what Nickelodeon is. How about that?
Wow.
Right? Like, we don't. It's not like we wait. Saturday mornings, turn on the TV and go to Nickelodeon. Like, Saturday morning, we turn on our Amazon Fire Stick and like whatever app pops up.
What if we utilize the word network TV as opposed to TV?
That makes sense.
In 94, although we had cable, and I'd had cable for 10 years by that point in time, so cable was still huge. Network TV still was king. And to be honest, that's probably the best network TV ever was.
Yeah.
Because if you think about the great shows of the last 30 years, with your
Hmm.
Sopranos or your Breaking Bads or
Game of
these,
Thrones.
yeah, Game of Thrones, these are all, not network TV.
No.
They were all cable shows.
Right.
Stranger Things.
Yeah.
We would not even have known what streaming was in 1994.
Nope.
And all these classic modern shows, none of them stream from network. None of them
No.
come from network.
The
And what we're
last
going to talk about in 94, it was all
oh, it was
network and
incredible.
it was king.
The last great network show, might it have been The Office?
It's good. As far as numbers go, the Big Bang Theory was a little bit bigger
Yeah.
than The
Yep.
Office was as far as
That's
viewership.
TBS though, right? Was that a TBS
Nah,
show or
nah,
CBS?
that was CBS.
CBS. Yeah, that
Yes.
TBS is what it's on now because
What it's
it's just
on now,
constantly right.
constantly.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. So you just think
Yeah.
like, okay, yeah, it's a TBS show, but no, it actually did broadcast on network TV. But yeah, a lot of, great shows are now you just assume, hey, what's on
What's dropping?
AMC?
Yeah.
Mad Men,
Yep.
Walking Dead, all these, you're like, oh, these are great shows. Dark Winds, all these are like, it's amazing. So different, so different. But let's let's dive into 94 to then take us back into where we are today. So I pulled some numbers to highlight the differences in the eras, essentially what we love to do at Twisted Eras.
Oh yes.
And in 1994, there was an estimated 265 million people in the United States. Now, that doesn't mean all of them had a TV, but just, roughly 265 million people. Today, the estimate between 350 and 400. So we're going to go 375 million people today. So there's about 100 million more. The number one show in 1994 is Seinfeld. Seinfeld was starting season 6 in September of 1994. It averaged 31 million people per episode. 31 million people per episode. That's over 10% of the
Do you
of
do
the
you
population.
recall? Yeah. Do you recall? Like, was it a certain night that Seinfeld would run?
Oh man, this is the thing. NBC's had started must see TV on Thursday nights.
Okay.
So Thursday night was essentially it. And
Yeah.
not to jump ahead, but
Right. Right.
two other huge shows would be on Thursday night, and both of them premiered within 4 days of each
Yeah.
other. It's
Did they compete?
incredible.
Did they compete for time, or was it they were
They
not
were
that
on
they
the
were?
same network,
Yeah. So they
so
kept
it
it.
was all lined up. Yeah, but if we look at like 31 million people were watching Seinfeld, number one show
Wild.
this year, and this is another crazy thing about network TV. What's the number one network television program for 2024? You got a guess?
I'd guess some. It'd have to be like a game show in my mind. No.
It's a game, but not a game show.
Oh, football. Yeah.
Football dominates
Yeah.
in 2024. Not to say football wasn't popular
I,
in 94, but it
that's
now
the
dominates
the weird
TV.
thing to me. Like that's to me, it almost has to be put in its own category because when I think of TV, and I know maybe it's not fair because I know networks and the budgeting and how they
Right.
add packages and things, obviously, and we actually talked about this, I believe, on the sports episode, if you go back to it with
Mm-hmm.
Fox when they swooped in and bought
Yes.
the NFC, the rights to the NFC broadcast. Like, I get that they are probably what keeps TV around today, and it's not
Absolutely.
cable, right? The packages, and you think about the sports packages and things like that. But I almost want to compartmentalize that, right? Like you can't, I guess, but
You
like
really,
there aren't.
you know,
It feels like
I
content that's
understand where you're
created
going.
live
There
action
should
content
be
as
like,
opposed to
yes.
right,
Yeah,
like
no, I
the
understand.
shows
But
that are out there. You
but
really
but
can't
Sunday Night Football averaged about 20 million viewers
this
for the
year.
last season. Yeah. So we have
Seinfeld
over
drew 11 million more people per
more.
episode.
with
than
with a
football.
100 million less people in the country.
Wow.
So I see, where you're going is a very interesting point. We have
Yeah.
live action sports, and then we have scripted television. So Seinfeld obviously was a sitcom. So let's go to the number one ranked sitcom for 2024.
Yeah.
And the only reason it's this high, it typically averaged about 7 million viewers, but it was the last season. We talked about the Big Bang. It was Young
Yeah.
Sheldon. Young
Okay.
Sheldon's
Yeah.
final season was this year. It only had 13 episodes. Seinfeld would run 22 to 24 episodes.
Right.
It averaged about 9 million people. So the number one sitcom in 2024 averaged about 9 million people.
Interesting.
That's about a 5.1 rating in Nielsen's ratings.
Wow.
If you go
Where?
back to 1994 and you put 5.1 rating with 9 million viewers, you would have been 130th
That's
in the ratings.
incredible. That's incredible.
130th. Now, I don't even know if there's 130 scripted shows on network TV anymore. It's all, like you say, all reality game shows and NFL. That's what's on
Yeah.
network TV.
Yeah.
But
I like
it's
that.
incredible.
So my mind goes to it. It's funny. I say this jokingly in jest, but um, live action sports, but also scripted TV. Where does wrestling fall in this? Right? It's scripted.
It's scripted.
It's weekly and episodic. It's actually among the longest running episodic shows. If you go to you look at Monday Night Raw, um,
Sure.
debuted. I what's it? I think it just celebrated Raw 30 was this year in Philly. The 30th anniversary. Maybe it was 23. It might have been
Yeah.
last year.
But
But like the 30th
it's
anniversary is around that time. So we're looking at Monday Night Raw launched, and it's now the longest weekly running episodic show on television.
wow.
Which that has its own story, right? Leaving
Mm.
leaving network TV. It's going
Sure.
from USA and later. Well, they actually, I think they kicked the can. It was supposed to be this
They get
October.
another
I think
year or
they
something.
another 3 months. They only gave him
Uh,
3 extra months. So in January 25, it's moving to Netflix.
moving to
So
Netflix. And I believe, has Netflix had any live
so
sports yet?
not yet. They will this fall. I believe they're getting an NFL game.
They're getting
So
an
Raw
NFL
was
game.
supposed to be the first like live sports entertainment thing when it moved to Netflix this fall. But since that's getting kicked back to January, what they're doing is giving Netflix an NFL game.
Wow.
And I think it's going to be around Christmas. I could be wrong on that. I feel like it was either like the Christmas or Thanksgiving weekend games. They were going to put one on Netflix.
That's unreal. Just looking
Go
at,
ahead.
how we're talking about the different eras. Um, the fact that Netflix is going to show some sort of live
Yeah.
sports. So,
Well,
so to me,
yes.
Netflix, was a DVD service by mail.
Yeah. Yeah. Even
I'm
before that,
sorry.
couldn't like oh no, that's Redbox. Couldn't I was gonna say, couldn't you go to Redbox
Yeah.
like the same deal and you had to
Yeah.
like get the DVD and da, da, da. But yeah,
So
Netflix was the
Netflix
send
is
you in the
is,
mail.
is going
Yeah.
on a little over 20 years
Yep.
of
And they
DVD by mail.
they just ended that, right? Like the people
They
that got
did.
the DVDs, you could keep them if you
You can keep
wanted.
them.
Put your last order in, and
You're good. We don't want
we
them
don't want these
anymore.
back. They're getting out
Yeah.
of the physical media world.
But you talk about, we love racing. Same
Yeah.
deal. NASCAR signed a deal with
Okay.
Amazon,
Oh, Amazon. That's right. Yeah.
so they're going to have 5 races that you have to be an Amazon Prime member to watch.
Yeah.
It,
Well, Hulu's
it's
thing too. Like the commercials, Hulu has live sports. That's always been a thing, right?
Yes, but
But
they're
because
who
of the bundle with ESPN and Disney.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's
So
they're
it's
showing live sports through ABC, NBC, uh, whoever. But
oh
this is going
man.
to be only on
See,
Amazon.
it gives me a headache, right?
It does.
I the conversation around cable TV and the move to cord cutting was all about like cable was getting too
Simple.
expensive, right? Cable was too expensive. I need to have the freedom to really choose what I want to watch
Right.
and
A la carte, man. A la
yeah.
carte TV. Yeah.
And it started out so well.
Amazing.
It was a great thing to do. But nowadays it's like you're paying more with all these memberships to all these different services to get the things that you want to watch. They've made it
Yes.
it completely it has flipped on its head and become so difficult to one keep track of, to the point where there's now apps that exist out there. Was it Rocket Money or whatever, that look at the number of subscriptions you have to make sure you're not paying for 3 Netflix accounts
It literally business model was created
to
because
cancel these services.
we're too dumb to realize how many things we have subscribed to because there are so many of them to subscribe to now.
It's
Because
stupid.
it's crazy. You're like, hey, I want to watch this NFL game. Well, it's on random streaming service too. I don't get random streaming service too, but I'm going to sign up because I want to watch this game. And then you forget to turn it off.
Even movies. Like, you think about the movies. How do you
Oh,
go about finding a movie you want to watch on TV nowadays? You can't. You go Google like
where's
uh
this streaming?
right, and you got, do I have a subscription to that platform? It's just
No.
it's stupid.
Yeah. And I'll say this, they can come sponsor us all they want. This is a freebie. Tubi is amazing.
The
Uh
free movies.
Free movies, man. I watch a couple of ads on Tubi,
Yep.
knowing that I can watch so many different old classic shows and movies and all that stuff. They have, there's a few Pluto, that
Yeah,
have done it
absolutely.
right. Uh, but the sheer fact that we're talking about this, and I know all this stuff and it's confusing. In 1994, I turned on the TV.
Right.
I could
And
watch
flip through some
Seinfeld.
channels. Maybe
I
flip
could,
through your
yes,
TV guide. How many
yes.
do you have any of the collectible TV guides?
Wow. I do not. But there
I
was a
I was weird
Seinfeld
that way.
literally about TV guides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was weird that way. I still have, there was a couple different ones. The wrestling had a few, like a collection that they would come out with, and there was like a bunch of
Yeah.
different, like Stone Cold, The Rock, Undertaker were on TV guides. I have some of racing as well, like a couple that had Dale Earnhardt was on the
Yep.
cover, and they're in a box somewhere in a closet. I'd have to go find them. That'd be
Can you
incredible
imagine
to dig.
telling a kid
What a
what
TV
TV
guide is.
guide was? I think Seinfeld still holds up to this day. I think it's great. I think it's classic. But there are a few Seinfeld episodes that the next generation, like your kids, I think your kids will laugh at Seinfeld, but there'll be things they don't understand. And there's a literal episode about TV guides because
Yeah.
Elaine steals George's dad's TV guide with Al Roker on the cover,
That's
and
right.
it's like,
That's
and it
right.
ends up Al Roker. She sees Al Roker on
On
the
the train.
subway.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, you're going to be like, I don't know what a TV guide is.
No, not one bit. Hey, how about not even just the TV guide? You remember the TV channel? Like the where the
That's
shows
all
would
it
scroll.
did.
And if you were looking for something on channel 30 and you just missed it, yeah, wait till it goes all the way back around. So, this is
So
before you had the guide button that you could hit on the TV and like
this
scroll through it yourself.
this is amazing. You can tell how passionate we are about TV,
Yeah.
but we are two guys yelling at clouds about
Yeah.
how
Oh,
crazy
the
it is
olden
now.
days.
So let's give due where it's due. The amazing thing about TV today is the ability to binge an entire season
Yes.
over the course of a couple of days.
Yes.
So like
Oh,
as
yeah.
as a kid, to me, Seinfeld, for example, Seinfeld came live on Thursdays at 9 o'clock, and then it would be on syndication, but you would get a couple episodes on TBS or whatever. You can literally go to Netflix now, and over the course of a few weeks, you can watch the entire run of
I
Seinfeld.
I did this, so it might have been around um there was a break in season 6 of Game of Thrones, like an extended period between 6 and 7. Like it lasted a little longer than normal, or like 6 had just ended, and there was a, I don't want to, no spoilers,
No
but
spoilers.
about what
Spoiler
goes
free
on at the,
episode.
right, of what goes on at the end of season 6, and everyone was talking about it. I was like, damn, I have never watched this show, so I don't even know what people are getting all worked up about, with how the season's ending.
Yeah.
So I took the opportunity. I think all the previous seasons were on Netflix or something, and sat over a 2-week period. It was disgusting. This was pre-kids.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have kids in the house or anything. Wife was streaming something else. So I took the 2-week period right before season 6 was set to premiere, or set whatever the timing was, and I caught up on 60 some hours of Game of Thrones in 2.5
Wow.
weeks. it was gross. I'm like almost afraid, like sat disappointed to have to admit that, but
Yeah.
that's the world we lived in. Prior to that, the other experience I have, and this was during the writer strike of
Mm-hmm.
like the early 20 or late 2000s, like
Is
2007,
7,
8.
8. Yeah. Yep.
24, another show I
Okay.
had never seen. I knew about it. I heard how awesome it was. Free streaming services, the closest thing we had to binging was when the seasons would come out on DVD. And you
Right.
could go, I had a friend that owned all 6 seasons of 24 that
Yes.
had been out until that, like to that point. And you're talking about like we spent the better part of my sophomore year of college in our dorm room watching every episode. It was a rewatch for him, and he got
Mm-hmm.
like enjoyment out of watching me watch it for the first time as well
Yep.
to see like all the big things that would happen over the course of 24. But like those were 24-hour long shows, right? Well, I guess 42 because you got to take
Mm-hmm.
the
You got to
18
take the
minutes of
commercials.
commercials out.
Yeah.
But we're watching a day long seasons of 24 over the course of my like sophomore year of college. But that's how we binged then. Like you didn't,
That is, but
you know,
that would have been so foreign to us back
yeah,
then. I mean,
right.
like syndication was huge. You talked about The Big Bang being on TBS
Yep.
or The Office or
Office
Seinfeld.
is
There's
Comedy Central nowadays, right? It owns
exactly
Comedy Central.
they constantly compete to because it fills time and it catches eyeballs
Yeah.
because you can pretty much so come in at any time and be like,
Those
oh, I'm going to
royalties.
watch this.
I can only
Yeah.
imagine what those royalty checks are like.
Oh my gosh. But we would have never ever
Mm-mm.
thought in 1994 like, wait a minute, I can own an entire season. Think about this. Like Netflix, for example, when Stranger Things comes out, they're going to put the entire thing out.
Yeah.
There's no waiting every Thursday at 9 and we got preempted one Thursday because there was sports on or something, whatever it was. And you're like, man, it's now been a week since I saw Seinfeld or whatever it is. Netflix is like, we
We're
shot
gonna
an
drop the
entire
whole thing.
television season. Here's the whole thing. It's
Yep.
incredible.
Yeah.
It's such a different mindset.
They still
You kids, you don't know how good you have it now.
there's some show, well, I'd say some. There's probably plenty that still try to hang on to that
The
episode,
majority
like
of them
make it appointment.
absolutely do.
Yeah, make it appointment viewership. They want to draw those live eyeballs to the
Yep.
product. Perfect example right now. June, it'll have published by the time this comes out. June 15th is the kickoff of season 2 of House of the
Yes.
Dragon.
House of the Dragon.
The prequel, but also the follow up to the Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
For those that know it, it's a week Sunday night at 9 o'clock. I know I can turn on HBO or not turn on, right? I can log into HBO Max.
That's right.
And the episode will drop at 9 o'clock that I can
That's
go
right.
watch it. So they try to hang on to that appointment viewing, and it's fun. What's your feelings on that? Like, are you someone nowadays that
here's
you
the
enjoy being
problem.
able to binge?
I do. And here
Yeah.
lies the problem. Is like, for example, there's an Apple TV show I love. My wife and I, we love the show Acapulco.
Mhm.
It is a sitcom about, a kid working at a hotel in Acapulco. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And they did the first 2 seasons pretty quick, and then the third season just came out, and it comes out every week. Well, we had let our Apple TV lax because I wasn't using it.
Yep.
Well, now what you do is like, well, I'm going to buy a month of Apple TV for $9.99 just to watch it. And so they're at week 5. So I know they've got 5 more to go. So in about 3 weeks,
you'll buy it.
You'll get it.
Yeah.
And you'll pay the $10 and you'll get your month, and then you'll binge the whole thing.
Yep.
So it's
smart.
It's yeah.
You've hacked the system.
But I would have never. I'm the old guy. I would have never dreamed of this.
But, How about this? You mentioned Apple TV. 1994. They're putting out what, the iMac with the single cord monitor, like everything in the monitor for the computer. Could you have imagined then them being a content producing a studio for content?
Studio, seriously.
Yeah.
Yes. No shot. That is another crazy thing in the different eras of, and many of them have tried and failed.
Yeah.
I mean, we would not have known what YouTube was in 1994. It wasn't a thing, wasn't even a blip. But the sheer fact that YouTube made Cobra Kai, which is another one of these amazing shows over the past decade, you're like, wait a minute. Amazon. YouTube. Yeah.
The book service wasn't out yet, or it had just, I think we get into this. I forget the timing. Is it?
It's
around
close.
This time. Like,
yes.
Bezos out of his little apartment sells his first book.
Yes.
But like, think that they've gone from that to not even just the online shopping giant,
So
but
much
like
stuff.
everything else they're involved in. I mean, you could talk about Amazon Pharmacy and like
Exactly.
all the tech products that are out there, but also
The tech
A24 Studios, right?
went
Like
in
it.
and bought all that stuff. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, it's yeah, seriously crazy how back in the day you had NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, but you also have Sony Pictures, you have Paramount, whoever it was making shows, right? Well, the sheer fact that, you know, AMC, for example, AMC was around at this time and they showed 40s era movies. That's all they did. And
Mm-hmm.
you were like, I can remember the first time like Die Hard or something showed up on
Amer
AMC
what
and it was kind of like
American movie classics?
American
Is that right?
movie classics. That's right. Yep. And you were like, wow. And now they have everything, including their own shows, including their own movies, uh, secondary streaming service. It's wild. We would have never dreamed of any of this stuff.
So
It's
I don't want
crazy.
to I don't want to sound like I'm jumping ahead to
Sure.
the favorite era, but like you mentioned, you enjoy the opportunity to binge.
I
Are you
do.
more of like, do you prefer that to the waiting week to week for an episode?
I do now.
Hmm.
And I will say this. This is not a 1994 show. It's not a 2024 show, but we're going to talk about how we do media today versus the past. Um, in I think it was 98, Saving Private Ryan comes out. And Saving Private Ryan is about 2 hours and 40 minutes, very intense. You walk out of there, on edge because of what you just set through, right? Well, 3 years later, post Saving Private Ryan, the same crew does Band of Brothers. It's a TV show, 10 episodes, hour-long episodes, so almost 10 hours of content for HBO. It has the exact same intensity that Private Ryan did in the 2.5 hour and 45-minute movie.
Yep.
Well, I binged that thing recently, and it was too much.
I've got that on Blu-ray.
Yeah, it,
Yeah.
it, it was too. I got to the point where I had to take breaks because it was
Yeah.
too intense. I don't think I could have sat there for 10 hours of that intensity because it was built to watch at 9 o'clock on Sunday nights for 2.5 months.
Yep.
And you had a week to recover from the intense action you just saw. And so that it for comedy, no problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for
Depends on
something that
the
you're
type of
that
content.
invested, like this is gut wrenching, realistic,
Yeah. Yeah. Random side
rough.
story
Yeah.
related to Band of Brothers. I don't know. I feel like we might have had this conversation before.
Mm-hmm.
Don Malarkey, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
he's a brother of Sigma Nu, which is what I am. I met
Yeah.
him and have a book signed by Don Malarkey because of a Sigma Nu event that he was at.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, it's good stuff.
What a great name.
Yeah,
Malarkey.
right. Well, yeah, right. It's
Yes.
made for that type of. He was
Oh,
made to be in the military.
but so I do love the ability to stream
Yeah,
and binge at one time. But that was one of those that was like, there would be back to back episodes of nonstop
yeah.
violent action. And you knew it was real. And so you were like, Eesh, this is rough.
I think
But
I'm the same way. I really do enjoy the, um, sitting down and getting through it. There's also like it's got its pros and cons. I find
mm-hmm,
myself with House of the Dragon, getting pissed off that I can't go right to the next one. But at the same
exactly.
time, I know that it like extends that excitement. When you get through an episode or when you get through a season of something, I'm also like, once I'm done, I'm disappointed that there's not
It's
more.
so
It's like, what
frustrating when you
it's
finish the show and the stream comes. You may like this knowing because there's no other
right, no
episodes.
more. And then or like,
Like, come on.
if it's something that just dropped and it's season one or whatever it might be, that you're gonna have to wait a whole nother year now until the next
Oof.
episode, like, set of seasons drops, and it's
Well,
just.
that's another the difference of the eras. If you look into it, Seinfeld had 24 episodes.
Mhm.
We get 10 now, typically
Yep.
on an hour-long show. The sitcoms will sometimes do 13, but it's still you have nowhere near the content.
Timing too. You could go
Mm-mm.
through. I remember when House of the Dragon was first announced, the first season.
Mm-hmm.
They talked about. I think it was a 6 episode first season or something like that. It might have been longer, but like
Uh-huh.
what they or no. So 2 part. here. So the end of Game of Thrones, there was like conversations because Game of Thrones ended at 6 episodes for the final season, and everyone was like, "Oh well, like if we're only getting 6 episodes, how long are they going to be?" And then you see, some of the episodes were like 52 minutes, some were an
Uh-huh.
hour and 18 minutes, and it was like, all right, well, it adds up to about like I guess a 10 season episode. So that
Yeah.
everyone all of a sudden gets excited about like looking at how long episodes are because you're not a cool thing for the studios is you're not tied to those constraints of I only have half an
You're not.
hour
It's
and
fair.
I've got to fit these, commercial breaks into that. So they
Yep.
can make the content as long as they want, as short as they want, to pack everything in. So you get kind of
Yeah.
a more complete story, or the 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 content itself is built in that actual producer, director, writer, whatever, everyone involved in their vision, as opposed to fitting into this constraint of television time slots.
Definitely agree. However, the 20 to 22-minute comedy is almost perfect.
Yeah,
When
it
you
is.
see it get to the 30 minutes, you're like, there was 10 minutes you probably could have cut, you know?
Yeah.
You said something very interesting that goes way back with the different eras as well. Is that in 1994 you knew in September all the new shows were coming out,
Yeah. Yeah.
and now
Your fall
it's
premieres or your, winter, summer
you got
premieres. Yeah.
fall, you got winter, you got summer,
Hmm.
whenever it's done is when
Yeah.
we're putting this thing out. And so I was sitting here, I was looking back, we talked about Seinfeld being the number one show in 94, but there was a week in September of 1994 that NBC premiered two shows that would go on
And
to do
that,
fairly well. Yeah. On
cool to
September.
cool to hit like we're gonna cliffhang this a little bit. Cool to
Sure.
like hit a have a show that becomes a hit,
Yep.
but like the amount of hits they had, and
Yeah.
then like that week in particular, like the two shows
Yeah.
that come out, and to have the success, and it's not even just success, like sustained, long sustained
Sustained
success
success.
of those
One of
shows.
one of these is probably as popular now as it was then. But on September the 19th, NBC premiered ER,
Clooney,
which
right?
was, yeah,
Part of that,
George
yeah, big
Clooney,
part of that.
Anthony Edwards, Noah Wally, the whole crew, and it was created by Michael Crichton. And Michael Crichton was so hot at the time because he'd written like Jurassic Park
Yep.
and all this stuff. And so NBC was like, "Hey, we have a medical drama,"
How about
and
that?
NBC had done medical dramas in the
Yeah,
past, and so it was a big deal. And I want to say they
drops.
go on like 1994. It goes on until mid
Oh
to
yeah,
like 2010, or they
yeah,
go for
something
like
crazy like
15,
that.
16 seasons, something crazy like that
You,
of the show. Now it's good. You can go back and watch it. Incredible acting. We
high
love Top
intensity
Gun, and
drama.
and
Yeah.
Goose is the star here, but George Clooney is not George Clooney that you know of today. This,
No. Yeah.
mega star. He's George Clooney,
Yeah.
third billing or whatever.
Yeah.
But that show is still great today. It does do some syndication, and it
Mhm.
popped up streaming recently. It had been a
Interesting.
while. It had not shown up on streaming, so it is not. It was it surpassed Seinfeld's number one show, and it came on after. So Seinfeld was at 9, ER was at 10
You mentioned Crichton.
Thursday night.
Like you talk about,
Oh,
put that in perspective. Jurassic Park came out in 93, right?
it
So
did.
like to go from that just global phenomenon to then
Yes.
another one, what
Oh, it was
what a winning
massive.
streak for him.
And ER was based on him. He had written this when he was a kid. He
Hmm.
had been, in that world, and that script had been sitting there for a while as a movie, and then they transitioned it
Man,
into, the TV show that it would be. Just incredible.
kind of
But
sets the stage for medical drama. Like unless you're talking about like the oh my gosh, the daytime dramas like
yeah,
General
General Hospital.
Hospital and all those like it's a one
Yeah, it had
life to
been on
live.
a,
Like those
yeah.
are medical ish trauma, I
But
guess.
see, I will
But
say this about ER, and one of the things that popped out was that, you know, TV was always seen as the stepchild to
yeah,
movies.
yeah,
Always. It
yeah.
just always was. And what ER did is it brought and to be fair, Seinfeld had been doing it for 5 years. It took a while for people to find it, but ER brought weekly movie level scripts
Yeah.
to TV. To the point like people want to work with them. There's a Quentin episode in ER. Quentin goes in and just directs an episode just because he wanted to. Like, oh wow, this is a great new
Makes it
show.
cool. Makes TV
Yeah,
cool.
exactly. It
Yeah.
made TV cool, and so
I mean,
ER did that. And
do you
you
get a Grey's Anatomy without an ER? Do you get a
know,
Good Doctor? Like
all these,
Today, like all
yes,
those.
think that's a good,
You
that's a
know,
good point.
New
And
Amsterdam.
what's funny was there, CBS had a competing show, literally the exact same show. One, they both were based in Chicago. ER was, and then CBS has Chicago Hope or something like that,
Yeah.
and they compete against each other, and one of them you know, and one of them you don't, because one of them made it, and one of them didn't. And that's not to say that the other one was bad. It was just like you literally have two shows about the same thing, hospitals in Chicago, and but they had Clooney, and the other one didn't.
Yeah, that's wild. Um, the which makes me think too, talking about this, and I guess it is, um, a 90 at hilariously a 94 premiere, it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Dick Wolf gets his start in 94, which is a name that should mean
Wow.
something to a lot of people. He had a show called New York Undercover that ran on Fox in 1994.
Okay.
He was a creator and executive producer for that franchise, but like made me think of him. Like you think about the legacy that man's leaving behind with all of the Law and
Law
Orders
and
and
Order.
all the spin-offs and everything there. And then to the you said Chicago. He's got the Chicago Fire Med PD.
That's right.
Like the world that he's kind of building. I again, does all of that go back? Can you credit ER for creating the interest
God,
in something like that for the success of a Dick Wolf?
that's awesome, man.
You
Yeah,
know?
you're very close to Law and Order.
Yeah.
That's still going. So
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, 3 days later, after ER premieres on September 19th, a sitcom premieres as well.
Oh, I want to play the music. I don't have it queued up. I should have had it queued up.
Well, we're gonna hit pause. Bob's gonna play the intro, and we're gonna come back.
Yeah, we'll get it playing underneath. Don't you worry.
That's right. That's right. But yeah, September 22nd, Friends premieres on NBC. And it doesn't, it's not, nobody knows what they have, right? It's a simple show, Friends in New York City. And little did they know that they
Some little
were,
coffee shop drama,
oh, that
Crazy.
they were, a year away from being just massive to the point that they eventually moved to Thursday night as well. And so you have Friends, Seinfeld, and ER for the next 3 years, back to back to back on that night. You want to talk about making some money and selling some ads?
They were doing it.
It's unreal. And to talk about like a kid today, let's say, 12 to 18-year-old kid will spout off Friends trivia like
It's nothing.
nobody. It's unreal, and
Mhm.
it's like they know the show better than the people that did it
Yeah.
because it was there on streaming on Netflix. And kids were like, oh, what's this? And the next thing you know, you go into places and the Friends merch now, it's just massive.
Yeah.
It's wild to think about. Now, granted, I lived in this era. I'm not a Friends guy. I'm a Seinfeld guy. But I get it. The,
Yeah.
the the talent on there is incredible.
Oh man. I mean, they all go on to do big things.
They all go on to do stuff. Yeah, and the reunion show was cool. They did
Yeah.
their reunion here recently.
I lost
Um,
Matthew Perry recently.
just
It's
recently
crazy.
lost Matthew Perry, which is hard to even like.
Fathom.
How is
Yeah.
that possible?
Right.
But yeah, what an incredible week
There's a
for
there's
NBC.
a funny commercial today that's out there of Jennifer Aniston, and she's like looking at this girl in a a hairdresser's chair that gets the Rachel, right, the Rachel
Oh,
haircut.
yes.
She's looking at her. I think it's like a Uber Eats commercial or something like that, but it's well, she's looking at her like, oh, I got your haircut. Like, oh, my name's Jennifer. She's like, Jennifer? She's like, no, the Rachel. She's like, oh, is your name Rachel? She's like, doesn't know what she's talking about. Like she forgets about all her past with Friends or whatever. But it's just a funny one that's out there. But
It
like
is
that's it's
great.
still being talked about today in those kinds of
Still,
forums.
and you can show this ad and everybody knows what you're
Would know
talking
it
about.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
It's incredible,
That's
but that is the perfect mel- melding up of the eras,
yeah.
because this is a show that was from the 94 era, that although it's still super popular in the 24 era, because it used the modern technology to
Mm-hmm.
stream and binge. And they also were early on selling the seasons on DVD,
Yep.
like you were talking about as
Yep.
well. Um, incredible.
You run through like you mentioned it at the top. The number of just incredible TV shows that were on at this time. Like
Mhm.
looking at the rankings list, and I think we pulled together like what top 20, a little more than 25.
Yeah.
Just to run through the names. You mentioned obviously some of these we just talked about. Seinfeld, ER,
Hmm.
Home Improvement. Tim
Yeah.
Allen, who's still
Tim
around
Allen.
doing TV
Absolutely.
today, right?
Yep.
Um, Grace Under Fire. Then you get some new news and sports with Monday Night Football and 60
Hmm.
Minutes, but NYPD Blue, Friends, Roseanne, Ellen is on at this time. Frasier is on at this time. It's just the names
Yep.
of shows that just I think stand the test of time, just in terms of like how popular that Roseanne had a comeback for a minute before she got
It
canceled,
did.
and then they're doing
Before she
they're
got
doing
canceled and they kept
right,
going.
and they kept going without her. So like it's wild to look at that list of shows that were popular at the time, and
Yeah. Well, what's you know, they Murphy Brown was the number one show the year before.
drops
Candace
was
Bergen, and to the point, like if you go back and you're binging Seinfeld, there's an episode where Elaine writes a Murphy Brown script.
yeah.
And I assure you, anybody under 30 has no clue what Murphy Brown is, because it did not translate. It is a very
No,
dated show. It was the number one sitcom at pre Seinfeld,
94.
but
Wow.
it just doesn't translate, to today. So it's
Yeah.
not that popular. But when you watch that episode, Kramer goes and works on Murphy Brown, and they actually, there it is.
Yeah.
They let them shoot
Shoot
on
right
their
there.
show.
It's
It's
incredible.
like, who does this? These are two competing networks, two competing shows.
I
Like, hey, we're going to show up on your show and film if that's okay. Absolutely, it's okay.
I know they're not on these lists, but even some of the other shows like A Boy Meets World, around or this time, it probably resonates more with me and kind of the ABC had their the Friday
Friday
night,
night.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and like the Full House was on at that time. Just some other really great
Family Matters, man.
Family
Urkel.
Matters, right? Yeah, he was
Yep.
part of that. So like, and then you could go through the history of how that changed over time, but it was a banging lineup of TV shows that
Yeah.
were just phenomenal to watch. And then again, you think about the today and what those shows mean today. There was the Fuller House and the
Fuller
remake of that,
House.
right? And then even Boy Meets World, you know a couple of the Topanga and
Yeah.
Sean, they have a podcast like Pod Meets World, and they started the Girl Meets World show right
Girl
out of
Meets
that. So
World.
I mean, all
Absolutely.
that's how popular that era of TV was. That they're looking back to it now and trying to recreate that magic in just today's
Abs-
format.
they absolutely are, because
Yeah,
the nostalgia, if you make something great at one point in time, it's going to continue on. And sure enough, you grew up watching Boy Meets World, and you
yeah,
were that age,
yep,
and now you're that age that they do the next, and you're like, oh,
right.
this is great. Yeah.
Someone's just got to convince. Like it seems like the last holdout is Seinfeld, and there's always talk, and there's that Twitter account out there of like Seinfeld today, like
Yeah.
right. So we need that today's version of Seinfeld because it exists.
So
It needs to
he
do it.
did the one episode
Yeah.
on Curb,
Yep.
and I think that's all you're getting.
I
But it was
wish,
still,
man.
you can go back. They recut it so that you can just watch the episode, and
Yep.
it's still funny. Lane's on her BlackBerry, which
Yeah.
was not a thing
No.
back then.
No.
And she's and he's like, all the BlackBerry people, what you're doing there is so much more important than what we're doing right here. It's so great, because it was like, and
Yeah.
George was a billionaire, because he had sold an app that told you the best place to use the restroom in the country.
Mhm.
And he had given all his money to Madoff, in the Ponzi scheme, so he was broke again. I was like, this is genius. This is it's like
It's
this
so
is a
good.
legit Seinfeld
Man,
episode.
man, it
Yes.
makes you want it.
I was
Makes
like,
you want more.
I will say this, Jerry doing comedians in cars with coffee is incredible.
Oh, yeah.
That's an
Yeah.
awesome, because you find out that like his character in Seinfeld really was pretty
Isn't too
much
different from
himself.
himself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But that's a great continuation. You know, gosh, would we love to see what Seinfeld look? He turned 70 this year.
That's insane.
Yeah,
Still
and
doing
he did.
stand up too.
He
Is
still
he still
does
got his,
stand
is it
up.
a residency in Vegas? Is that what he's doing? Or is he
No,
bouncing
he did.
around?
He's bouncing around. Netflix
Okay.
has given him a ton of money because
Yeah.
he's done a few Netflix shows. But he just did his first movie about Pop Tarts, which was a bit that he used to do.
He's
So, and it's very nostalgic for the '60s. It's not horrible, as my wife said. It's silly, but it's not George and Kramer and Elaine
no,
and Jerry.
that one. We got to bring it home and we got to talk about like looking at, you growing up and me
Hmm?
growing up and today and this 94 era, man, it's a strong one in terms
It's
of like, but
so
how do you grade it? Again, I think it goes back to the conversation at the top. You got to
yeah,
take the whole industry from the content and the technology side of it and like the content and the consumption
sure.
of TV. And look at it from those lenses, like through that
Yeah,
lens.
because let's be honest, content wise today, what we get is good. We just don't get much of it. It's
Right.
much more quality over quantity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, where back then we got lots of shows, and you had a handful that are iconic. Um, the ability to watch it at 1 o'clock in the morning because you can't sleep is unreal. It's like, oh, back then you would be like, "Hey, what's on TV? I'm having trouble sleeping," and it would be some sort of stupid infomercial
Right.
for a Flowbee
Set it
hair
and
cutting
set
vacuum,
it and
or
forget it. Right.
yes. Now I can go. You know what would be nice? I can watch Seinfeld at one
Yeah.
o'clock in the morning. So I'm going to go to Netflix, season 6, episode 1. Ta-da! It's tough. I can't fathom myself saying today's era is better. I love the idea of the technology, but I just don't think the quality is there. So as you probably assumed, I'm going to say our era, the original 94 of
Yeah.
TV was better than it is today.
Yeah. That's, hey, solid reasoning, sound reasoning on your part to
Mm-hmm.
to do that and make that decision. I think I'm going the other way. But
Mm-hmm.
there's reasons why both kind of you could go either way with it. The content itself growing up at that time and having Nickelodeon with like all the game shows, like there was such great TV for a kid back
Yeah.
in that day. And looking at it and I don't even like Double Dare and all
Double
those like
Dares.
yeah,
So that
go
Double
get
Dare
that.
comes back to my day too. So
Yeah.
you got to be Double Dare as a kid.
Oh, Legends
And
of the Hidden Temple. I dream that's come back as like there was applications out there and I really considered putting my name out there as like a 30 something to go on Legends of the Hidden Temple for
nice.
adults. But like you think about those, oh man, just being a kid and wanting to be on those shows and
Yep.
um
And
incredible to
answering every question, you're like, you idiots, how do you
come
not
on,
know
like
that this? Come on.
I had dreams of being a silver snake. I'm just gonna like that's what
Uh,
everyone wanted to be a silver snake in my day, not the orange monkeys or purple iguanas or whatever it was. But like it was, you needed to be a silver snake. Um, but today it's just there might be not as much quality to your point. I'd almost argue there's more quantity than anything. Like you think about all the streaming services, is it too much quantity? Yeah, and that certainly impacts the level of quality. But at the same time, I think there's something for everyone. You could look at the different platforms and what they offer, and I just think of I'm in the middle right now of part 2 of the Jinx that just dropped not too long ago.
mhm.
The docu series that exists across so many different platforms, and um, you know, there's so much out there that you can find what you want at any given time. To your point, like it could be
Mm-hmm.
1 a.m. right? But even to like a Peacock, for example, and someone that loves wrestling and
Mm.
WWE, there are, I mean, my God, I could go back and watch every single WrestleMania off of Peacock in a
Right.
partnership with WWE, and they've got so much original content. That's the other buzzword we didn't really get to, right? The original content that exists on those platforms. Peacock has docu-series on like individual superstars to like a behind the scenes of the day of a certain event that went on and like a big return of a superstar to they've got all those Stone Cold podcasts, this Broken Skull sessions, like those are all, there is so much content that if you wanted to deep dive into a topic, you certainly can. And
Yeah.
it's very easy to do so. Um Distracting? Yeah,
Very.
certainly. But I can also, I got YouTube TV, something we didn't get into. Like on my phone, right? I can crack out my phone, sitting in, waiting for I God knows, like a bus to go downtown for something. I can watch, what's going on my phone.
That
I can
is
take
tough.
TV on the
Tough to
road with
beat.
me,
You
right?
can
Like
absolutely
you
can.
can watch anything, anywhere, at any time. And it just maybe a part of the problem with today's society. There's more conversations around that and
There, yeah, there's
who we
negatives that go
are
along with that, but
who we
oh
are
my
as human
goodness,
beings, but like just in terms of the ability to consume what you want, when you want, where you want, how you want, um, I don't think it can be beat.
you're dead on. That is. I'm changing my vote.
See, that's what this
The
is all
the
about. Growth
the
and
ability
maturity.
the
Yep.
ability to, as you say, um, I went to DMV, for example. It used to be just a horrible experience, right? Now, even the
Nothing.
DMV is like, hey, take this ticket. It's going to be 15 minutes, and in 15 minutes, you can sit here at the DMV watching Sports Center on your phone.
Yep.
It is you're right. It's unreal. Um, un unreal. So I will say I don't think the reason that I would pick the other generations. I don't think Seinfeld's being made today,
Right.
and that hurts.
Yeah.
The shows that are made today are just. I'm not saying they're all bad. That's not what I'm saying. But I
Right.
just
Right.
don't think Seinfeld, Friends,
Yeah.
ER. I don't think they're being made today, and that would be why I chose the other route. However, the ability to
So
watch
see,
anything at any time
this
is
goes
pretty
back
tough
to
to
our
beat.
conversation. It's a content and a consumption standpoint.
It
Like
is
the content of 94 better
yeah,
than the content of 2024. The
yeah,
consumption, the way you can consume that
way better.
content, way better today. So
And
it's
and
you got to
and not
give and take a little here.
and not to end on a tangent because I know we're getting ready to wrap up. But one thing we also did talk about, and you when you were talking about it, it popped in my head was public access TV back in 1994, where you would have these essentially homemade shows
Mm-hmm.
on a public access TV, which is you said YouTube TV, but if you go to YouTube, there are 10 million YouTube shows that would essentially be what we watched on public access,
Mm-hmm.
and you can get anything.
Yeah.
Now they're not professionally done.
Right.
It's usually just somebody. I have been obsessed with this show. The kid has a GoPro on his chest, and he is a drum tech for a metal
Oh,
band, and that's what he does. And he
watch him
goes
play.
through and yeah, exactly. In like 45 minutes, he takes you through his day of getting to the arena, setting up the drum kit, teching the kit, sound checking, going through the performance with watching him, make sure everything's good, and then tearing down. I'm like, I never would have thought I would have watched this, but
We're all
that
movie
was
producers today. I
we
look at this.
are.
I You could look at this. We're making a show right now.
We absolutely are. And
We're
that's
making a show.
that's why I changed my mind as well. You sold me because I was thinking like the content, like you say, the content that we have, we could only have dreamed of. We traded, we'll get into music in another episode, but we traded tapes in 94 of Metallica concerts. And it would be on old tapes and be like somebody had done it with a terrible recording. It's awful, right? But when you would mail these tapes, and I had certain tapes and I could mail it and he would mail me tapes back and you traded tapes throughout the country. And now we can do that instantly. There is no trading. It's Rob is sending me videos live from WrestleMania. You know,
Yeah.
there is no mailing of tapes.
Mm-mm.
So you sold me.
Cool. See, look at
Yep.
that. We did it. No, that's awesome, man. What a fun one. I
Yeah,
knew it. See, I said it at the top. This was low key going to be one of my favorite episodes, and I think the way this discussion went just proved it.
oh,
It
it's
was
awesome.
perfect, and it makes the ability to look back at 1994 just that much cooler to dive into a topic like this and just dissect it too. Like there's
Absolutely.
so many great aspects of it that I knew it was going to be a fun one, and I'm glad we got to do it, and we'll
Yeah.
get to continue to do it.
Sounds good. Hey, let's go watch some Seinfeld.
All right, hey, until then, keep it twisted.